Wow, I made it. Nice. Hey, everybody. Bitcoin design community here. We're talking today with a very esteemed guest, Kevin, about Manuscript, Liana wallet, and all the interesting things we can we can do, should be doing, um, and how it improves self-custody, inheritance, and probably about a lot of other stuff. So maybe just to get started, Kevin, maybe you can give it a little bit of intro about yourself, about
Sure.
Wizardsardine, and what kind of your goals are with the different projects that you have.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Kevin. I've been working on Bitcoin for a while now, since 2013. I worked on different things. I started with hardware, then evolved on like payment stuff, trying to see what we could do using Bitcoin as like a payment rail. Then I started a consulting business, typically working with larger banks to explain them and do architecture on Bitcoin for them. And one of the projects, of the last projects of this consulting firm, was actually from a hedge fund that wanted to have a way to be in self-custody of their funds without any trusted parties, but at the same time to be able to have different restrictions on how each employee could move the coins. So trying to put restrictions on funds without using a third party, so everything in-house. That was thought to be impossible without governance. So you probably have talked about governance before on the calls. And actually, I came up with an architecture that we call Revault, which is a Bitcoin Vault architecture that actually worked without covenants. It works, but it's not very practical. I mean, it works, but yeah, it's very difficult and complex to use and run. But anyways, so we started to explore this route, and we were like, okay, this is a big deal. If we can actually do kind of like restrictions on spending, so better security without covenants, that could be a very big thing. And so we started a business with this. I gathered a team together, found my co-founder Antoine, and we decided to go all in on this. We raised some funding because it was a very large project, or it is a very large project, and so we definitely needed some research to build on it before we could bring anything to market. And so for that, we created a company called Wizardsardine. So that's the company we have today. But because we were only working on Revolt, we were just communicating as Revolt, just not to confuse people too much. And last year, we started working on something different, which is Liana, we are talking about today. And so because now we have two products, we just came back to use the name, the actual official name of the company, which is Wizardsardine. So that's the short story about the name. Why people are confused between Revolt and Wizardsardine. Revolt was the first product we built. Liana is the second one, and the company is Wizardsardine. Um, Personally, I'm not a developer. People often think I am a dev, but I'm not. I'm just a pretty technical person. I consider myself as an architect on Bitcoin, layer one. So I can reason pretty low level, understand and craft scripts and figure out how to build things directly on the layer one to get things done. So that's a weird skill set I guess when you are not a dev. But yeah, very good knowledge of the technicalities of Bitcoin. Although yeah, I don't code. And yeah, my position in the company is just CEO, so I deal with as well all of the paperwork and the bullshit on the company side. But that's a thing you have to do. And yeah, that's me.
Cool. I so that was answers already one or two of my questions. Was kind of the what's the difference between Revolt and Liana, and also um, what are the overlaps or the connections between covenants and Manuscript? So
Okay.
or how they can enhance each
Yeah, this
other.
one is a tough one. This one is a tough one. So one of the things personally, and also as a company, we try to get done is that we work on products that can work today. So in Bitcoin, if you expect things that may be very soon happening, like upvolt or any covenant or anything like that, you never know when they are going to be merged. Even Taproot, back in the days, we never knew which year it would be merged. And that's always the same problem. And Manuscript is kind of the same issue, although it's not a fork. So, I mean, there's things that are easier. But yeah, if you start thinking, how could I do that the best way possible, you will have a very different answer versus how can I do this today? And it's really the question, do people need this today? Because if they do, you should already build with the tools you have. It might not be perfect. You have to do compromises, but it's still better than the status quo of saying, oh, I'm going to do it better in the future. That's actually an argument that came up this week on Twitter. Someone tweeted that Liana was impractical for inheritance. And I was, that's surprising because I was like, okay, sure, maybe you think it's impractical for inheritance, but what else do you have that's better than Liana? And then the answers were like, oh yeah, you can have these funds that you can release, 10% every year in the future, whatever. You can't do that on Bitcoin today. You will be able to in the future if and when we have covenants and all the tools around it. But if you compare something that we have today to something that would be maybe possible in the future, we're talking about different things. And so covenants are a thing that don't exist today on Bitcoin. There is different proposals. We don't know which one is the best yet. There's a lot of research going on, and we don't want to have many of them at the same time because then you need to maintain all of them for the future. So that's the problem, really. It's not about preventing innovation. It's just that every time you get something into Bitcoin, you are not going to be able to remove it afterwards. So you have to maintain it forever, for hundreds of years. So if we start putting a lot of different things, then some of them will not be used. It's just a pain for the developers in the future that have to maintain something that nobody uses. Then Manuscript. What is Manuscript? Well, Manuscript is complex to explain. So let's say as a very big simplification, it's kind of a tool that lets us do scripts. So something else than just being a single sig transaction or restriction on spending in a way that is safe, in a way that you are not going to create other way to spend this condition that you don't really realize because Bitcoin script is not really human readable, in a way that's also compatible between wallets. So you don't have to have a very specific self-made wallet to deal with time locks or things like that. This is one of the reasons, for example, time locks were not widely used in Bitcoin. It's just because you needed to have a very specific protocol or a very specific wallet every time. So typically, Green, the wallet from Blockstream now. So Green uses time locks. People don't know about it. It's completely hidden from the user, but it uses time locks. But you can only have these backups in Green. You cannot import them elsewhere. Lightning Network uses time locks, but the Lightning Network is not a normal Bitcoin transaction either. It's a different thing. So if you want something that's just cross-compatible with things, you needed some kind of a standard, but it's more than a standard, and that's Manuscript. It's a way to describe what your script does, and then your wallet can interpret that and build the addresses that correspond to that. So Manuscript is a really useful tool. It is not a fork or anything. It doesn't modify anything in Bitcoin Core. It doesn't require any changes in Bitcoin. But the changes that it gets in Bitcoin Core, because there is still some PR, is for the wallet itself. So how can Bitcoin Core understand these Manuscripts, and how can Bitcoin Core spend from Manuscript and things like that? So it's not a change to the protocol. It's more like a change on the Bitcoin wallet of Bitcoin Core itself. And so, yeah, these changes are kind of useful because we don't want, for example, at Liana, we don't want our backups to be only working with Liana. It's just, in Bitcoin, you want things to be, if the company disappears, if the wallet disappears, whatever, you don't want people to be stuck with their backups. You want other wallets to be capable of launching them. And so that's already the case today with Bitcoin Core. So that's the kind of things when we're talking about Manuscript. Manuscript has been around for 3 years, but it's been in Bitcoin Core only since November last year, right? So we're talking about very short time frames, and so very fast innovation on top of that. That's why everyone's talking about Manuscript now. Very few people were talking about it before. So yeah, and then Manuscript covenants, not at all the same things. Covenants are a way to restrict what you can do after receiving funds, let's say. So when you have an address currently, the address It's basically encoding the script you have in it. So it just says how the person that will get funds in this address can spend it. So they need a signature. Maybe they need to wait for a time lock. And that's basically it. That's what an address contains right now. With a covenant, you can say what this person will be able to do with their funds. So it's after that. It's not about how they can unlock the funds. It's where they can send it. So you can restrict maybe the amounts. You can restrict maybe the addresses they can send to, things like that. And this is impossible today with Bitcoin. So that's what covenants will do, very separate from Manuscript.
Okay. So do I understand it correctly that covenants can restrict transactions, whereas Manuscript is on the general spending?
Yeah, so Miniscript would be like the normal Bitcoin script. It's on the inputs as you have today. So it's just restriction on how you can spend inputs in your transaction, how you can unlock them, while the covenants are more playing with the transaction itself, including the outputs. So you can change the way the transaction can be crafted, and you can restrict this. So you can say, this transaction can only have one recipient or something like that.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I tried to get Liana working, and I didn't get to it because my it couldn't find the cookie file, and I,
Okay.
and there was no way to. But maybe is there? I'm not sure if I don't want to put you too much on the spot with a demo. I also linked to the videos that you shared in the GitHub issue, so anybody who listens to this after the fact, you can also check out the links in the GitHub issues. But yeah, I think it would be maybe a good time if you can just give us a little walkthrough
I can
of.
try. I can try. Yeah, so if you had an issue with the cookie file, it's because you probably tried to connect to a remote node, maybe not on the same machine. And currently, Bitcoin Core needs to run on the same machine as Liana. And if it's not that, maybe you are using an older version of Bitcoin Core, or you're restricting the cookies for a reason or another. So that could be that you run Bitcoin Core with a different user. That could be that you have the old RPC password and login in your config file, and that disabled the cookie file back in the day, so you need to change that. There's a few
Okay.
reasons why the cookie file could not work. Anyway, that's going to change in the next releases. You won't have to do all of that. It's just for
Nice.
now, it works like this.
Cool.
So I'm not sure where I should start. So let's first explain what Liana is, and then I can show you some stuff with it.
Yeah.
But Liana is just a Bitcoin wallet. Let's see it that way. It's a normal Bitcoin wallet like you use every day. It's a desktop wallet right now. We don't have a mobile app currently, and we don't have a web version currently. Things like that are going to happen. So currently, you have to install it on your computer. It runs like a normal Bitcoin wallet. You can receive money, you can send money. If you want to do more advanced stuff like multi-sig, you can do it. So it handles PSBTs, if you've heard of that. So if you need to share transactions between multiple people for a multi-sig in an organization, you can do all of that. So it's just a normal Bitcoin wallet. But the difference is that the first time you install it, when you set it up, you can also set up different spending conditions outside of the regular one. So let's say your normal one is just, I have my ledger, and that's my way to spend money. It's my hardware wallet, just a single sig. Instead of just doing that, you can also say when you set it up, and I'm going to show you that after 1 year, in case I lose this ledger and I lose all of my backup of this ledger, after 1 year, I can go to, I don't know, my friends, like 3 of my friends, and if 2 of them agree, they can give me my funds back. So it's like a 2 of 3 within my friends. But they would never have access to my funds as long as I keep using my ledger. So if I don't lose it, I have no risk of them going away with the money. And if I lose it, I can have like this social recovery thing. Doesn't have to be a social recovery. You can use that for inheritance, because you could give a key to your family, let's say, and they are never going to be able to access the funds unless you stop using it. So there is this concept of time locks, and the time locks we're using. You might hear that there is 2 types of time locks in Bitcoin. You have absolute and relative.
Yeah.
We are using relative, which means that it counts at the time you receive money. So every time there is a new UTXO, a new coin that's created in your wallet, that starts the counter for this coin. That's one of the UX problem. It's that every coin has a different, duration left, right? They all have the same time lock when they start. But if you receive a coin yesterday and another one today, there is a 1 day difference between, one of them will expire before the other one. So the way we deal with this is that when you spend, every time you spend in Bitcoin, you consume a few UTXOs and you create some change. So you have your payment going out, and then the change is the difference. So your change is also restarting the time lock. So if you use your wallet normally, you don't have to think about the time locks at all, because every time you spend, the change will automatically restart the time lock for this. If you never use the wallet, then you have a problem, because this time lock is going to decrease until it expires. And so in this case, you can do a transaction to yourself. So that's what we call a send to self. It's basically a transaction that you send to yourself, so it restarts the time lock. That's a UX problem, but it's the better option, because the other one, which we call the absolute time lock, is when you set a specific date in the future. It could be a block height, but let's say a date in the future. So you could say 1st of January 2024. That's my expiration date for my coin. The problem there is that you cannot easily push these dates. Pushing the date, changing the date would mean creating a new wallet with, let's say, 1st of January 2025. But you cannot disable a wallet in Bitcoin. So it means you still need to track the one from 2024 in case someone sent you money there in these addresses. And then you have a second wallet. And then every year you need to create one, but you need to keep track of all the other ones just in case. So that's why we don't use absolute time lock. The relative one are cool because every time you receive a UTXO, it restarts. So you can keep the same wallet forever. It's just going to keep pushing by a year, but you don't have to set up different wallets. So that's, I think, an important point. Yeah, so I'm going to start with just showing you the wallet, and then I'll show you the installation process. So I'll do just the opposite of what I did on my demo.
Nice.
How can I
ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So let's say you lose your keys and you're waiting 1 year to get to your funds. Can I DOS you by every 364 days sending you a transaction? Would that reset your time lock and you would never receive your funds?
Only for this transaction. So that's the thing. It's each UTXO. So a wallet doesn't exist from Bitcoin perspective. What exists is UTXOs. So the new UTXO you sent me, I will not be able to claim them for a year. But the old ones are not affected. I have to be the one sending them to reset the time locks for them.
That's what it means by the input level, whatever inputs you pick in. Yeah.
And then if you want to go a little bit more technical, there's a lot of fun stuff around that, because this is going to be a big deal. I really believe that these time locks are so useful from a safety perspective for people not to lose their coins, that we need to abstract as much as possible these time locks and the reset of them. But the benefit we get from being able to recover the coins after, if something happens, is just huge. So there is a lot of people already thinking about all of the ways to automate this kind of refresh without the user interaction. But at the same time, we need the user to sign because it's a signature. You still need to move coins. But yeah, there are many ways of doing it. For example, when you receive coins, Bitcoin, technically, you don't have to be connected to receive funds, right? The address is always valid. You don't have your computer to be connected. But you have ways to do some kind of transactions where if you are connected, you can do nice stuff at the same time. So that's what we call a pay join, for example. So if someone sends you money, you can join some of your money there, and it will create multiple outputs. It's very good for privacy, but it's also very good for refreshing time locks, because now your wallet could automatically connect your old coins to anyone that deposits some funds as well. And so you use the transaction fee of the person depositing money to actually refresh your coins as well. So we can do a lot of fun stuff like this. This is not implemented yet, but there is a lot of very interesting things that are going to work. The covenants are also going to be very useful. With covenants, you can basically have a third party refreshing your coins without them being able to steal your coins, because you can restrict that they can only spend the funds to your address again. So all of the big UX issues you will see about these time locks, they are being worked on, and they are not dramatic in the sense that they will be there forever. There will be ways to completely abstract them from the user. But from the Bitcoin perspective, it's still, every UTXO arrive, you have the time lock there. So just wanted to say that.
Oh, I have a question about the
Yeah.
manuscripts because I'm trying to get my brain around it. A way to describe what your wallet does, how Bitcoin Core can understand. Okay, so it's restricting inputs. So is that restricting, when you say inputs, it's what are you referring to in terms of inputs?
In Bitcoin, in Bitcoin, you don't have a wallet from a technical perspective. You don't have like an account with money in it. That is not the case in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, you just have like different coins, like in your bucket, in your wallet, with whatever coins you have, whatever currency you have. Bitcoin is like that. You just have a bunch of coins, and every time someone sends you a transaction, they basically send you a coin with the value of this transaction, and you have to store it somewhere. And so you store it in what we call the wallet. And each of these coins in Liana, when you receive it, starts its own counter for the, let's say, 1 year expiry, right? So if you have one of these coins in your bucket for a month already, this one will expire in 11 months or will be recoverable in 11 months. But if someone gives you a new one now, the new one will be 1 year, right? So that's what I mean by inputs. So these coins, when you spend them, they become inputs in a Bitcoin transaction. So Bitcoin script applies to these coins one by one. So you could have different restrictions on different coins. It's not the case here, but that's just how Bitcoin works, right? Manuscript is just a way to describe that better. It's not a new feature on how you can, it's not really a new feature on what you can do. It's more like it makes it practical to do. You are not going to shoot yourself in the foot if you use more complex stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm still getting my brain around it, but I'll get there. I'm a very visual person, so I'm trying to imagine there's all these coins that I have in my wallet, and the manuscript is restricting how I'm spending these coins in some way.
It's actually before that. It's when you give an address to someone.
Yeah.
This address contains already the restrictions. So the Bitcoin address is actually containing information, and the information in this address is how can the next person spend this money. So when you give an address to someone right now, a Bitcoin address to someone, if you use a basic wallet, like any normal wallet, what your address contains is basically saying you will be able to spend this money if you have the private key corresponding to whatever public key. So it just says if you have the right private key, you can spend it. The things you can do with Liana is that instead of just saying this, you can now say, okay, this address will say you can always spend if you have the private key, but if you wait 1 year, then another person will also be able to spend it. And all of that is contained in the same Bitcoin address if you want.
Now I get how it's related to inheritance. Okay.
Right.
There we go.
And I think it's going to be quite nicely visible when Kevin shows how the wallet looks now, because it tells it shows you what the different coins, the different UTXOs. So it's a good segue.
All right, I tried to share my screen. I don't know if it's working. I think it is.
Works, yeah.
Very good. So this is just, this one is running on on reg test, so I can mine blocks and stuff if we want to do things. But this is what the wallet looks like today. This is just a home page. We are displaying payments. That's actually that's also something we are quite interested in discussing, and I think it's a good design decision. Typically in Bitcoin, we talk about transactions, but I think this is a mistake because the transaction is really a technical thing. What people care about is the payments, where the money is going. So typically, if you send money to someone, you're doing a payment. I don't think you should think in like a Bitcoin transaction because we might want to batch these payments for like paying lesser fees, or because you have multiple payments to do at the same time and you just want to do one transaction. And so here in the homepage, we are displaying payments. I don't have labels here. They are going to come very soon, but we will have labels, and that's going to be much clearer of what's happening. But these things are not transactions, they are payments. And so then we have a transaction screen that actually could be, you know, more technical transaction that may contain multiple payments in the same transaction. Let's say if you do one transaction to pay all of your employees, it's different payments, but within one technical Bitcoin transaction. So anyway, that's just a small thing I wanted to say. So here it's just a normal wallet. The only difference is this block here saying, you know, in 8 days, the first recovery path will become available. This specific wallet I'm showing, the setup was that I have 2 ledgers. It's the one from the demo I have on YouTube, on Twitter. So I have 2 ledgers. One of them is just my normal one, the one I have, and just having this one, I can sign transaction, I can send them, no problem. If I lose this one, the person or myself who has this ledger will be able to spend, but only after the duration expire. And here the duration is something like 8 days. I think it's 9 in my descriptor, but I already mined a few blocks to advance it. So we have this going on. If I want to send, it's like any normal wallet. You know, I put an address here, I put the amount. Currently, the fee rate and the coin selections are not automatic. Mm-hmm. So currently it's manual. Again, this is coming soon. We're going to make it much nicer for people, but you know, it's working. If you know what you're doing, it's perfectly working. Each of the coins, so these are the coins we're talking about, right? So these are UTX. They are different transactions I received or different payments I received, and each of them have their own time locks. So these 4 are going to expire in 8 days. These 2 are not even confirmed yet. They are not mined yet. So the time lock is not started because it starts at the time it's mined, right? So let me mine a few blocks actually. Okay, I'm going to do 100. All right. So if I wait a little bit here, it should refresh. Okay, cool. I'll do another 100. So I can actually mine blocks because I'm using a test net called direct test, and it let me mine block like pretty instantly on the machine. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so now you see it's just 7 days because I mined like 200 blocks. 1 day is 144. So the first coin that expire will expire in about 7 days. The message is still quite nice with me because it's 7 out of 9, so there is no rush. If I'm really close to expiry, it will tell me to really refresh my coins or do something about them. Here you can see that some of the coins expire in 7 days, some of them expire in 8. So typically, like when we have the automatic coin selection, or if you are thinking really about what to do when you need to select your coins, you should select the one that will expire the soonest, because you would need to refresh them anyway. Without time locks in Bitcoin wallets today, you're trying to more like optimize on the one that would be the closest value to what you're spending, just to save on fees. So it's just a little bit different of a logic we have to implement here. To receive, it's just a normal wallet as well. You have Bitcoin address, you have a QR code. We decided to be able to display a few of them if you want, like to generate a few addresses. Like if you want to receive multiple payments at the same time from different people for the same thing, you can just generate a few and you just share it with them. We're implementing labels as well, so they will be there in the near future. We have a coin view. So the coin view is really these UTXOs we have. Transaction view, it doesn't really matter here, but we can see the TXID, we can see the descriptions if you have only one. And PSBTs, I don't have any here. PSBTs is if you want to craft transaction but not sign them yet, or if it was a multi-sig and you want to share it. So basically what I want to say is just that this is a normal Bitcoin wallet from a user perspective here. You just have send, receive, everything is normal. Let's say I'm gonna take an address here, put an amount of, okay, and the transaction fee, okay. So I'm just going to select, this one is enough. So it gives me the status. So this one is a send to self. It detects it because I took an address from the receive panel, so it automatically tells me it's sending to myself. If I did take an address from outside, it would be a normal, showing me normally the amount. We have this status here. It's not very useful right now because this transaction is just a single sig. So it's either signed or not signed. But when you have multiple people, you need to know who signed what, because otherwise you never know who hasn't, right? So if I click on it here, it's just telling me, okay, one spending path is available means that there is no recovery path that's available on this. It doesn't really matter. And I need a signature from this ledger. I think it's registered, so I'm going to try. Just going to connect to log into my ledger. I hope it's the right one. And I'm going to sign. Yeah, cool. So I clicked on sign, and because we we did this registration, so when you have Manuscript, you need to register this Manuscript to the hardware wallet, because the information of the private key is not enough. There is multiple private keys, there is multiple spending conditions, there is the time lock. So you need the hardware wallet to be aware of that. So I already did this registration before. So now it's telling me, do you want to spend from a known wallet? The wallet is called Liana, and I'm saying yes. Then it's going to show me the amount of destination address. So I need to review the outputs. So the amount 1234, very good. That's the address I'm sending to. And then it should show me the fees that I'm spending to the network. And that should be signing. Yeah, cool. So now on the screen, it's signed, and I can broadcast it. So we don't have automatic broadcast on Liana desktop because for some reason, people might want to keep a transaction that's already signed and not broadcast it yet. But yeah, let's say I want to broadcast it, and it's set. So the user experience here, I didn't have to think about anything related to time locks. I just did a normal transaction, signed it, sent it, and that's it. It doesn't show here because it's not a payment. Technically, it's just me sending money to myself. So it's here. It's a send to self in the transaction and confirm right now. So that was the normal way of using the wallet. You just have your ledger or whatever hardware wallet, and you just use it normally like any Bitcoin wallet. Now, if we're getting closer to expiry, I actually don't know how many blocks it is, but let's say about 1,000 maybe. It's going to take a little bit of time. So I'm going to generate 1,000 blocks. It should get this to pretty much 1 or 2 days of expiry when it's mined. And what I will show you afterwards is as well what is the original setup. So how do I define which key is what and when they become active. In the meantime, I'm going to show you in the settings what we have. So in the settings here, we have a recovery button. So that's where you actually do your recovery. So if your main spending wallet, like your spending device, signing device is lost, or your backup is lost and you need to do a recovery, you will go through this screen. And currently, so this is a sweep, meaning if you reach the recovery, it means that your wallet is probably compromised because you already lost the primary path. You should not keep using it. So it's a sweep. So you're going to send an address. So basically a new wallet you set up elsewhere. And you're going to empty this wallet and put it to the new one. So you put the address of where you want to send the funds and the fee rate. And that's it. You don't have to select the coins or whatever. Everything will be sent there. Right now, I can't do it because my recovery path is not available yet. Okay, so now that I mined 1,000 blocks, we're getting very close, or we already are at a stage where coins can be spent. So when you reach this stage, the wallet is really yelling at you, telling you, hey, you haven't moved your coins for a long time. You are very close to recovery. So you can refresh them manually, right? If I click there, I can do a send to self transaction. I need to sign it, but it will refresh the coins. So if I'm really close and I still have my keys, I should do that. I'm going to check if any of them can be recovered. No, not yet. So I'm going to do another few blocks and show you how we can recover them.
real quick, does anyone have questions so far on this? All good? Well, we can't hear you.
Not yet.
Okay.
The word recovery path for me is like, it almost feels like it's the same like clear wallet or empty wallet, because you're literally just clearing out everything from your wallet that's available to you.
You don't have to. It's almost like a backup key. Let's say you have a key to your apartment, you give someone else the key, and it's like that. But the other person doesn't have to go in and steal all your stuff and move everything out of your apartment. They can just unlock the door, right? Or give you the
Yeah.
key. It's just that mechanism. But what you do with that is really up to you or whoever then holds that key.
So if I understand correctly, the person who sends you the coin would send you the coin with a mini script.
No. In Bitcoin, it's you ask for a payment, right? So
Yeah.
someone who wants to send you money will ask you for an address, a Bitcoin address. So you are the one to provide this address, and this address already contains the restriction. Someone cannot restrict for you what you can do with the money. That would be a covenant. So
that's a covenant, exactly. Yeah.
So if you give an address to someone, you are the one who designed this address, who decided what condition is in there. And so the addresses that you will give to people with Liana already says it's your key, but after a year there is another key that becomes valid. The person sending to you doesn't know that. They don't need to know that. It's just that every time you receive money to this address, it already contains this recovery path and everything.
So the recovery path and the mini scripts are related.
Yes. Well, I mean, you could have done it without Manuscript, but nobody does it because it's horrible and people would lose money. So it was possible. It's just it was not. Yeah.
I think mini script is like the technique that you use to configure your recovery path. And the recovery path in the end, that's kind of what you work with. That's the logic that's then embedded into your wallet. But mini script's like the tool, like a programming language in a way.
Okay.
Exactly. So a normal user, a day-to-day user, shouldn't even need to be aware that Manuscript exists, right? It's a scripting language or or kind of a simplified version of Bitcoin script that helps basically developers or knowledgeable people to easier build valid scripts, and also to be able to review and audit them so that it's clear what the script does. But from an end user perspective, uh, you set up a wallet, and in the background, Miniscript is defines the conditions for all addresses in this wallet. So if you have a 2 or 3 with this time lock here, it's the script or the restrictions are on the basis of the address or of the wallet. So it's not related to the incoming transactions, but it's related to your wallet.
Yeah, and the only reason why we're actually talking about Miniscript itself is that because it's a new thing, it requires compatibility. And so if you are not aware of some basic like this right now, that not all wallets are compatible, you may not understand why your backup is not compatible between one wallet to the other. And that's really the problem. And that's what we've been fighting for 3 years with hardware wallets. None of the hardware wallet was compatible. And that was terrible, because if you're building tools and none of the security devices are compatible with it, it's kind of useless. And it was chicken and egg, because the hardware wallet manufacturers, they don't have time to build stuff that nobody can use because there is no tools to use them. And so it was always the same thing. Now that we have Ledger being an actual commercial hardware wallet you can buy, and out of the box it works with Miniscript, so it works with Liana, that was the very first step. Now Coldcard is compatible in their pre-release version, in the Edge version. So we need to work on it a little bit on our side as well. There will be some changes to do, but Coldcard will be compatible very soon, and Jade is also coming up in the next few days. So hardware wallets are starting to come, but it's still very new, and so you need to be aware of this Miniscript thing, because if you buy a hardware wallet, let's say I don't know, a Trezor, they don't have Manuscript capability. So you cannot use a Trezor with Liana today. So this is the reason why we're talking about these things. It's just you need to know what's compatible with what. Same with Taproot, which is another thing in Bitcoin. If you have like a backup from a Taproot wallet somewhere and you import it in a wallet that doesn't have Taproot, it's just not going to be able to understand it. So Bitcoin is not just one thing, it's a lot of things and it still evolves. So you need to kind of know what's the minimum requirement to be compatible with your backup, basically. So that's why we're talking about Manuscript a lot today.
Yeah, and I think for me, as another aspect is that Manuscript, you can configure wallets in 1,000 different ways. And ideally, you can put any configuration into a wallet and it will know how to interpret this and also how to efficiently communicate that particular configuration to the user. But if there are unlimited ways to combine this stuff, then we have to be really smart about the UI design.
Exactly. So there will be something, and that's a very good point, and people are not very aware of it yet. From a UI and UX perspective, you build for the user that's going to be doing something specific with it. So you can try to kind of define a range of things they should or are going to do with it. But with Manuscript, you cannot. So Manuscript itself is very generalistic, and so we are not going to be, it makes no sense to try to be compatible with everything Manuscript can do for every wallet. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have some kind of specialized wallets. So like, for example, Liana is currently specializing in time locks. So if you use time locks, it's going to show you, like, as I was saying, the expiration, the refresh, the things like that. Bitcoin Core is compatible with Manuscript, and you can import your backup from Liana in Bitcoin Core. But Bitcoin Core is not going to show you anything about the coins soon to expire or anything like that. It can spend from it, but it has no way to show it to the user. It's not aware of what it should show to the user. And so when people start doing really weird things with Manuscript, it will not make sense to let them import backups anywhere. Like if they import a backup that they created, like a wallet they created somewhere else, a very weird one, they import it in Liana. Liana technically could understand what it does, but not be able to vehiculate to the user. Let's say it uses hash locks, right? We don't have any way of showing hash locks to the user with Liana. So the way it's going to go is that we will have some kind of I hate the word standards, but we'll have some kind of industry templates. Like, you have like this Liana template. If it's compatible with Liana, some other wallets will have the same kind of some kind of work design thing, where like, okay, if it's within this kind of Liana template that can be used for like inheritance or backups or things like that, you would have, this wallet is compatible with a Liana import, and this one as well, and this one as well. If it's a completely generalistic one, it needs to show to the user, we are not going to show you all the information. You need to know what you're doing. So generalistic stuff in Manuscripts, we have to be careful. It can do too many things, or so many things, that from a UI perspective, we need to understand what it does. And it's not necessarily human friendly, is what I mean. Sounds a bit confused, but yeah, the way it goes is that already today, for example, for Liana, if you're trying to use something that doesn't follow the, you have at least one way to spend it in a primary path, then you have at least one time lock, and then you have at least a recovery path. If you are trying to import something different than that, Liana is not going to accept it. We're going to say, okay, this is not from Liana. You have a chance that this is not going to work out. So yeah, we're already looking into that from the industry perspective. Another thing on this, it's very good for users if the hardware wallet, the hardware signing devices, will be able to recognize these templates. Because right now, when I register my descriptor, it shows me this Manuscript, but no user is going to read this descriptor thing. So it would be so much better if the hardware wallet knows, okay, this is an inheritance template from Liana, and it's going to show you that. It's going to tell you, this is an inheritance template from Liana. Here is your primary path. Here is your recovery key. That's all it shows you. It doesn't show you the blah, 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 blah. And when we have this template, this is going to be so much more user-friendly. So these templates are not going to be restrictions on how you can use Manuscript. We don't want that. It's more to be ensuring compatibility between some wallets. So you have like these kind of labels. Okay, this one is like Liana compatible. It will work with all of the Liana templates. So it's
we have about 10 minutes left. Do you still want to go over the wallet creation or what you were doing? Sorry, I interrupted you earlier, but you were in the middle of something.
Yeah, no, all good. I'm just going through the recovery now that I spent, like I mined enough blocks. So we have the recovery. I'm not sure if I registered this wallet, so I'm not sure it will work. But here is like, if I want to do a sweep. So the time lock is expired. I went to the settings. I went to the recovery thing. And now I have 5 coins that are already expired. So the time lock is lapsed. So I'm going to try to sign with the other key. And I hope it's the right one. So it created me a transaction, but for this recovery. So now I have 2 paths. I can either spend it with the normal wallet, like the primary one, or with the recovery one. So I'm gonna try to do this. I'm not sure it will work right now. Yes, I don't have the descriptor on it. Okay. So I need to go register the descriptor on it. It's gonna take a minute, and then I can show you the creation of the wallet. But yeah, this is just to show you like a recovery, how it works currently. We can make the user experience much better so they don't have to go to settings, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, the recovery is supposed to be only in case of catastrophic failure. So you're not going to use it every day. This is only if something goes really wrong. So that's why we don't need to put too much effort on it right now. Okay. So I'm going to sign with this device, and I really hope it's the right one. It's processing. This one is an older ledger, so it's a bit slower to sign. This is also something interesting with all of these more complex scripts, is that there is more data going to the signing device. So it's actually starting to be limited in terms of processing power. And this is an interesting problem we never really faced before in Bitcoin. So if you have like very large transactions, using an older signing device might take minutes to spend sometime, which is not fun. So yeah, I'm just signing now. But I guess this one is 5 inputs. It's not much.
The mitigation for this is the signing devices get more powerful, or what can you do?
It's a very good question. Okay, so it's done. It's a very good question, and it's not an easy one. So okay, I just broadcast my my recovery transaction, so a bunch of them will be gone. Yeah, I need to mine it. The mitigation for this is complex. You have multiple ways of designing hardware signing devices. My personal favorite one is where the signature is done on the secure element, on the secure chip, because in that way, the private key never leaves the secure element. Okay, so now a bunch of money is gone because it went to the sweep transaction here. Yeah, so this one was my recovery. And so, yeah, so if it's done on a secure element, the problem is that these secure elements are very slow. So like devices like Ledger are going to be limited unless we find much faster secure elements, but they don't really exist today. So that's an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the other way of doing it is to run the signature itself on a general purpose chip. So that's what typically Cold Card would be doing, for example. So the secret is actually on a secure element, but when you sign, they extract the secret and they put it on a much more like normal chip that could be made faster. So you could replace it by a faster one, right? So possibly the hardware wallet design will go towards this model, where you can have a much faster chip to sign very large transactions instead of keeping everything in a secure element that might be too slow.
All right. Yeah, maybe since we have like 5 minutes, I mean, I have more time. We can just continue with the call afterwards, and everybody who needs to drop can drop. Or we could say we finish the kind of the thought that we have here, the usage um, of the recovery, and maybe have a follow-up call maybe next week for the actual setup and registration path. Would Because I still have many questions, so we could go either way.
Uh, yeah, exactly. It's you quickly the stuff, but I have a bit of time if you want to stay a bit longer. But yeah, it's really up to people.
Yeah, so I'll have time. Maybe we just continue, and everybody
Yeah,
kind
I
of.
think we can do something like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and it's fine, right?
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I just launched Liana again. I deleted my previous wallet. I just deleted the folder in my Liana setup. So right now, this is a bit special because I already have a Bitcoin mainnet on this one. So I'm running a demo, but it doesn't mean that we're not using Liana. So we have our company money on Liana right now. So this is on this mainnet. So I'm not going to run this one. Yeah, thanks. And so I also have a signet that I use for some testing stuff, and we are going to do the installation process on the reg test like we were doing right now. So when you launch it the first time, if you don't have any setup, you have three options. You can create a wallet, which is what we're going to do now. You can participate in one. So that's if you have multiple people who are setting up a multi-sig wallet on different computers. So one of them is going to create, and the other one are going to participate. So that's how we can share your public keys and things like that without being in the same room. You don't necessarily want to be all together. If I wanted to set up a wallet with you guys right now, I can. I just connect my ledger, I go to participate, I can get my XPub, share it with you, import the descriptor and everything. And then you can also, of course, restore the wallet. So that's what I can do to get the wallet we had earlier. I have my descriptor, I just import it, and it will get all my coins back and everything. So I go to the create a new wallet. It's complaining because mainnet is already done. I'm going on write test. So I have this. Minimum in Liana, as I was saying before, is that you have a primary path, meaning you have your normal way of spending with no time lock. Then you have at least one time lock, and then you have at least one way to spend from this time lock. But you can have as many as you want. You can stack time locks one after the others. Yeah, you can do pretty much what you want. Okay, so these time locks, there is a limit for the relative time locks we were talking about earlier. The limit is about 15 months, so 1 year and 3 months. You cannot do more in Bitcoin. If you want to do longer than 1 year and 3 months in time locks, you need to do the absolute time locks. And as I was explaining, it's a nightmare from a UX perspective because you're actually creating new wallets every time and you need to keep track of the old ones. So for anything relative, 1 year and 3 months, that's the best we can do. In Liana, you can do single sig. So I can just, I'm just going to use the ledger I have connected here as my main device. I'm just naming it my black ledger. So this is now how I can spend from the primary path. If I wanted, I could do a multi-sig. So I could say I need to have this black ledger plus my laptop. So I'm adding a key, and I'm going to set the computer, this computer. So this is a hotkey. So of course it's not as secure. The key is on the laptop. So now it's a 2 of 2 between the black ledger and my laptop, for example, right? And I can keep adding keys and I can change the threshold. Doesn't matter. So let's say my primary path is a 2 of 2. And my recovery is going to be, it could be just this black ledger, for example. In case I lose my laptop, I can say, well, it happens that my laptop dies or something, and I just want the black ledger to be doing it. So if I wanted to do that, it's already there. If I wanted to do that, I just select my black ledger, and after 1 year and 3 months, only one signature is required instead of the 2 of 2, right? But I can never sign with this one. I can never sign with the laptop only. If I wanted that, I could do a 1 of 2, with the laptop and the ledger. But as we know, like keys on computers are not as secure, so I don't want to do that. I'm just going to do the black ledger only. And I'm actually going to do this as like around 6 months. Okay. And adding another recovery in case, I actually lost the black ledger, so I can never sign with a laptop. It's terrible. If my backup is only the black ledger, well, that's bad, because if I lost it, my coins would be lost forever. So I'm going to do the orange one now. And so this is going to be my last resort recovery, if you want.
And this last resort is this is recovery path 2, right? The orange one, and recovery path 1 is the black ledger. So that means the second recovery path is relative to the first one, or
no, it's not. It's always from the coin itself. So from the time the UTX was mined.
Okay. So you would need to mentally keep track and say, okay, my primary recovery path for the black ledger is 6 months, and for the orange one, it's going to be 12 for each UTXO. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's what it does. So currently what I'm setting up here is basically using my ledger with the laptop as a 2FA, because let's not call it a signature. It is technically a signature, but it's not very secure on a laptop. So I need to have both my laptop and my ledger to spend. In case anything happens to my laptop, after 6 months, I can just sign with the ledger. So that's pretty cool. But if anything happened to my ledger, which could happen, then I can actually sign with the orange one. This one we're going to keep in a safe somewhere, never access it. And even if, let's say it's in the bank, even if the bank opened the safe and tried to access the money, they cannot, because it's time lock. So as long as there is no problem with anything else, this orange ledger is completely useless. It only works after 1 year and 3 months, right? And so here it showed me, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I was actually going to ask you a question after you were done explaining this, so I'm happy to wait.
Okay. So just finishing on the screen, because we have the laptop as a signer, we need to be able to back up the key of the laptop. So that's why it's showing it here. It would not show this screen if we are not using the laptop as a signer. So this is just to back up the key of the laptop if I wanted to. And then it just showed me the descriptor. And as you can see, this is not human readable. And that's why we're talking about this kind of templates, not template as like hard restriction, but template as in being able to understand what it does and show to the user, this is just a single sig, no, multi-sig that become a single sig that become a different wallet again, right? We need to be able to display that somehow to understand the logic behind the descriptor for the users. I can read this, but yeah, I guess most people can't read this. And then, I need to back up the descriptor. So basically copy paste that, put it in a file. You can put it in a Google Drive or whatever you want. It's better if it's encrypted, but it's not too bad if it's not. There is no private key information here. But this information is enough to know where the coins are. So this is, don't share this on Twitter because anyone would know how much money you have, which is problematic. But at the same time, it's not as critical as keeping a mnemonic. So yeah. And then I need to register it, as I was explaining before. I'm going to skip this step because we've shown it already. But when you register, you basically check this on the hardware devices. And then you're good to go. It's just checking the connection to my Bitcoin core. It's green, so it's good. And I finalize, and now I will have my wallet. That is empty, so that's my new wallet, right? So currently, if I wanted to send something here, well, I can't see it. If I wanted to send something here, I would need 2 signatures now, the one from the laptop and the one from the black ledger, right? And yeah, that's it.
Right. Joshua, what was your question before we move on?
Yeah, so I was listening in, but I'm not sure if I was following the whole time. So if this question is dumb, forgive me. But I'm just thinking because like there is like this relative time lock, we would constantly have to keep like doing these consolidation transactions or pay joins in order to make sure that the 6 months or whatever it is that is like intent, right? So I cannot afford to have this wallet like offline for like 6 months. That's like going to be an issue.
Yeah, this is true. So this is the main compromise by doing these things, is that the primary path is always valid, right? When the time lock is reached, it doesn't disable the first key. So that's the first thing to know. It's only activating the other one as well, but doesn't deactivate the first one. So if you just think about the status quo of what you can do today, in the worst case, if your time lock expires, this is what you would have today in a multi-sig of 1 out of 2, right? So you have two keys, one in the primary, one in the recovery. Without time locks, that would be a 1 out of 2 wallet, where if you lose one key, you can go to the other one and ask them to sign. The problem is that there is trust here. You need to make sure that the other signer is not going to try to spend when you don't want to. So in the worst case, Liana just becomes a normal wallet, so status quo with a threshold multi-sig. That's how it behaves from the Bitcoin perspective. But if you want to benefit from the time lock, yes, you need to, from time to time, either use the wallet. So with the change address, it will reset the time locks, or you need to do a self transaction to yourself to refresh the time locks as well. So that's what I wanted to say, is that the compromise is that from user experience perspective, it's not amazing, but in the worst case, it's not worse than what we had already. So that's just the same as what we have already. The alternative, and you have some wallets that do this, like Nunchuck, for example, the alternative is that you trust a third party. So with Nunchuck today, you like they have a time lock. They say they have a time lock, but it's not a time lock on Bitcoin. It's a time lock from their side of things. So it's like if you go to them and you ask them for the key, they are going to tell you, no, we haven't waited 1 year. But they could if they wanted, right? It's just you trust them to not sign or to not give you the key. But the advantage here is that you don't have to deal with any time lock on chain. So as long as you trust them, you're fine. But this is trust. I don't like trust. So yeah, this is the compromise. If you want the thing to be done on chain, you have to refresh it at least once a year in 3 months. Otherwise, the alternative would be to trust either a machine to sign, like a cosigner, or trust a company. But yeah, it's either trust or compromise of doing refresh.
And even if you have Bitcoin in cold storage for a long time, it's still good practice to kind of regularly check in and make sure that you haven't lost your keys or your devices are working and all of that stuff. But yeah, it does potentially open up a security gap if you're not careful with these refresh transactions.
Yeah, I think the real problem is not really in the user experience of connecting once a year. It's more in the fact that this is on chain, and so every time it requires to pay transaction fees, and that could be an issue. So we are completely losing markets here, like Venezuela, for example. People there, they would love to use Liana because it's very important to have, a safer backups, and it's important to have inheritance in your wallet, especially if you really use Bitcoin and it's important to you as money, right? But if you are talking about values of, $1 transaction every time, the transaction fees are somewhat significant. And if you don't generate enough transaction that the change is enough to refresh your time locks, then it's like sending to yourself will cost you a transaction fee on chain. And we know that, and there is no bypass to this. So this is one of the issue. But again, that's life. That's what we can do with Bitcoin today. At least I didn't find any way to bypass this.
Do you think some of these patterns will in some way find their way to Lightning?
Yes. So Lightning is already using this kind of stuff in a sense, because you have your collaborative close doesn't have a time lock if both parties agree. But if only one wants to close, then you're triggering this time lock to make sure the other party can defend itself, right? So you already have this kind of stuff. Now, can we have that when you close your, or at least, you know, if you have Lightning and you die, you want your money that is on Lightning to go back to your inheritance thing. So can we have this kind of stuff where on Lightning, you still have a recovery path that your family can get access to your funds on Lightning? Yes, as well. This is another yes, and this is a good one. It's not done yet, but Manuscript and this kind of scripts for the recovery on Lightning would be definitely possible, and that's really cool.
Awesome. And what are you working on right now? Like, you don't have to go into a lot of detail because we're kind of cutting the time here close, but what's the big thing that you feel like is missing, or do we just need adoption? Do we need the technical, or are there still a lot of things in the UI that you're working with? What's keeping you up at night?
We are too small as a team. We're just 4 people. This is not enough. We have too many things to work on, and yeah, definitely it's an open source project, and we have contributors, so really happy with that, and very glad we have them because that's helpful. But yeah, we're working on different things. So the first one for the desktop wallet here is that I have to run Bitcoin Core manually before launching Liana. That's just not good. I mean, it works, but we just want to open Liana and it will run your Bitcoin Core, and that's it. And if you don't have it, it will install it and run it and configure it, right? So this is going to be the next release. Then we also want maybe to reduce on the privacy level of Liana and let people connect to a remote node if they want. So for the typical user that just installed typically like a mobile wallet or whatever, they do not connect to their own nodes. The normal user doesn't care. And so if they really want to keep the same user experience and maybe later improve their privacy, we should probably let them connect to a trusted node. That's remote, that could be hosted by us or by someone else. It's bad for privacy, but at the same time, if they just want to use Bitcoin and have a recovery path for inheritance and things, maybe it's useful instead of blocking them with Bitcoin Core and all of that. So this is also important, and we're looking into that. But for us, Liana Desktop is still going to stay the advanced tool, and we are working on other ones that are much, much simpler. We are working currently in a web version. So it runs in your browser, but it's still your own keys. It's still your hardware wallet. We don't have anything, right? We don't have keys. We're not custodians. It just runs in your browser, and the user experience would be very similar to having your coins on an exchange if you want. So you just have the address to send and the amount of money you want to send. You don't have to think about transaction fees. You don't have to think about coin selection. You don't see the UTXOs or the coin list. All of that is completely abstract to the user. They just see a balance, and they can send money, they can receive money, right? So this is a very different market, but this is something we're working on, and it should be there in about 3 months. And the offering for this will be that the recovery key is none of their problem either. It's just they connect their ledger or whatever, and they know they have a recovery key after 1 year and 3 months with a trusted third party. So the trusted third party will be different custodians. It will not be us. But you can think of, BitGo, Unchained, large companies like this will be able to provide you with the recovery service, but they will not be able to access your coins unless you really screw up and lose everything. So this is a different way of showing the product. It's just, kind of, you can use this wallet. You just need to plug in your hardware wallet. It's your keys, it's your coins. But if you lose everything, you can press the button, help me, I lost everything. And after a year, the custodian can send you the money back. So very different kind of product. But yeah, we're working on all of this. It's a lot of work for a small team, but we are just trying to see what is the most interesting thing for the people. Is it the advanced tool where they can do whatever they want? Is it the very simple thing where they want to be in control, they want to have their own funds? You really want to recommend to your family to use a proper Bitcoin wallet. You don't want them to use, I don't know, Coinbase. But at the same time, you don't want them to want to take the responsibility that if they lose their keys, they lose everything, then you can have these kind of options, right? So this
Makes
is what
sense.
we're
So it's
working
like you have this technology here, and now it's about finding what the right products are that people will use for all of the millions of different use cases all around the world.
Exactly. Another obvious one is for businesses. For businesses, this is critical. There is different reasons why businesses don't do self-custody. One of them is liability. They don't want to have the risk of being like, our funds are locked forever because two of the partners lost their keys. This is just not acceptable. Now you can do it because after the time lock, you could have, again, a custodian. So people that are currently using BitGo, for example, could still be using BitGo as a recovery, but they would be in full custody, like they would be in self-custody unless they lose their keys. So it's kind of like having the BitGo or the custodians of this world, but only as an insurance, not as a normal custodian. So yeah, a lot of things can be done here.
Wow, interesting. It's pretty cool. And I'm thinking about because I'm gonna work on inheritance topics over the coming year. So this was, I think, a very nice intro intro here. And is there something that you would say from a UX or design perspective that's kind of topic number one, or something that nobody's currently has a solution for?
The one I'm personally struggling the most with is naming things, because I hate renaming things. In Bitcoin, we're very good at giving bad names to things. And yeah, like I'm trying not to come up with new names myself because I know they're not going to be good enough, and then we will need to change it again. And yes, sometimes it's very hard to explain these time lock things to people, for example. When we talk about expiry, it sounds like a CBDC from China there. We're not expiring coins. They're not becoming invalid. It's just the time lock is expiring, not the coin. So how can we not make people scared that their money is expiring? It's not. It's still there. This kind of things. Recovery, maybe recovery is not a good name either. I mean, to me, it's a recovery. It's like you have a problem, you can press the SOS button. But at the same time, what is it really? So all of these things are very hard to reason with, especially with people that are not familiar with Bitcoin. But even Bitcoiners are having a very hard time with this time lock stuff. Many people are very scared that they are going to lock their funds forever. This is not what we're doing. We're not. They can still use their funds anytime, right? The time lock is only for the recovery thing. We're not talking about crafting things by hand. It's just a few clicks. You cannot do big mistakes here. So yeah, it's a bit difficult. Another one is that there have been a lot of wrong education around backups. We've been telling to people way too much that 24 words or 12 words is enough. It's never been the case in Bitcoin. It's just that right now the wallets are pretty good at brute forcing all the main derivation path. So no matter from which wallet you export and in which wallet you import, it will find your coins. But if you do the same key, if you put the same 12 words in two wallets and you just generate a wallet with this, it might be a completely different addresses it gives you because it will use a different derivation path. So just the 12 words is not enough to do a backup. We've been educating people completely wrong, even in single sig. And as soon as you start using multi-sig, now you just can't brute force it. So now you need the descriptor. But you should already have the descriptor for the single sig. It's just we've been completely wrong with educating people. And now they're like scared because when you use Liana, you also need to back up the descriptor, and it feels like a risk. But it's really not. It's just it should have always been there. It's just yeah. What can I do? It's we need to diseducate people to make them the right education again.
Yeah, I was, I was, I had like written it down that I wanted to talk to you, at least mention this because this when you like show like the recovery descriptor, and it had all that info, and the first thought in my head was that to like those 12 words in your head are not going to help you recover that,
Yeah,
you know.
it will not.
And I think, am I right in thinking that the Moon wallet, what it does is that it like their like recovery method uses descriptors, right?
Sorry, I didn't get this one.
Moon wallet,
Yep.
they're like the their like recovery method has like descriptors, and like there is like a file you get, and it has all the descriptors and all of that, right?
Yeah, you have different ways of doing descriptors as well. Yeah, technically, if you wanted, you could put the private keys in the descriptor as well. But again, I don't want people to do that, because then you would have the two kind of descriptors and people would be confused about the public one and the private one. But again, it's a possibility to do just have everything in your descriptor, for example, and completely forgetting about your mnemonic. But yeah, I really like to reason that keys are related to people, and they are private. You never should share a key with someone else. So if you have a wallet in common with multiple people, you should only share the descriptor and you should never share private keys. And I think that's a good it's a good way to explain to people that, you know, the secret is the private key, but then the descriptor is just the wallet itself. You know, where is it? It's really the map. So if we can keep that and explain that to people, it's two different things. One is the secret and one is just, you know, where is the money. Then we're good.
Awesome.
Yeah, did a quick check, and Moon Wallet does use descriptors. I shared the link in the chat. Just to answer your question, yes, Raj.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Christoph. I'll read that.
Michael, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, I was trying to steal more time from you guys. So I guess we could keep talking for hours, but I think it might be a good time to kind of call it a day here and let everything sink in. And yeah, maybe have a follow-up call with if there's something specific that you guys are working on or want feedback from or help from the design community with. Um, that's why we kind of have these kinds of calls, that we also can help open source projects with what they need, maybe some research project, a small one, or basically anything. So I think we have a good idea about that, and yeah, maybe there's some potential for a collab or a joint project or something. So I think we can think about this a little more, and yeah, maybe have a follow up, because I have now the questions that I had were answered, and now I'm starting to have probably different ones.
Yeah, it's a big rabbit hole. I can give you a hint as well for finding other questions. One of them is if you have like a middleman, not necessarily trusted party, but let's say someone like us at Wizardsardine, and we need to help someone with recovery. So if there is a third-party custodian, maybe how can someone go to them and ask for the recovery? Because there is a key there that will sign and move all the coins. We like to avoid KYC in Bitcoin. This is one of these tools. You know, it's a tool on layer one. If you don't, I mean, if you use a layer one tool, you don't necessarily want to have to share your passport information with a third party, right? So finding what could be good things for people who lost their key already, how can they kind of request a recovery by kind of proving they are themselves? Could be a password, but hey, if they lost their key, probably losing a password is a thing they can do. Should it be security questions? Should it be, just send it to their email address and you just hope they still have their email address? So there's a lot of things when you don't have KYC of the people. You don't want anyone to be able to recover if it's a trusted third party having the key, but not necessarily a full KYC between these two. So how can you identify, or how can you prove it's you and they should send you the money after the time lock is expired? These kind of questions are very interesting, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just checking. I asked about this stuff in the BDK Discord, and I think it was Steve Myers. He wrote something about blind signers that basically sign transactions for you without really knowing what they're signing, but then you use an alternate authentication mechanism. That seems like it's a little bit along those lines. I just posted that gist in the chat there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's what
also
we're looking at, but yeah, it's not enough. I think some people will want more ideas, and I hate the idea of security questions. Like what's the name of your first dog? I don't think that's secure. So we need something that's easy enough, but not.
Yeah, I mean, a whole other question is also that, if you rely too much on this guardian, on this who holds those keys, like you need to have a guarantee that they actually properly protected things and they didn't lose the key. So when you show up at their doorstep, they can actually help you and they're not compromised. So there's, but I mean, like Kevin, like you said, this is kind of the fail-safe scenarios where you're really in a pickle. And by the way, in half an hour, we have a PayJoin call coming up with Yashraj and Dan Gold. And since you brought up PayJoin before, maybe we can also just quickly ask them.
Yeah, and I know they have looked into Liana and how you can use it for, so like the PayJoin. So I think it would be useful to ask them. I'm not going to be available for that call, but yeah, I'll definitely listen to it if you record it as well.
Yep, certainly will.
All right, so let me stop the recording.